All right, so we're going to take, today we're going to take these points, -3, comma, -2. And the other point is 1, 6. The question is asking us how we find the equation of the line. Find the equation of the line that passes through those 2 points. And I'm realizing that's kind of like a little blurry. Maybe if I zoom out a little bit, it'll get better. Adjust. Okay, hopefully that's okay. Is that better? All right, so we could use the formula. We have this formula for slope. M equals, and it's on your formula sheet, M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's coming from the idea if I plotted these points. So I'm actually going to we don't have to plot the points, but just for the sake of explaining it and trying to understand it, I am going to plot the points. So I'm going to start with my handy ruler. And I'm going to draw my X and Y axis here. Okay, sometimes I have graph paper that already has this, but, and then what I like to do when I set this up, we label this one is the Y axis. Here's the X axis. And when I set this up, I count by 2s if I use a scale of 1, just to make it a little bit cleaner. I like to spread the numbers out. Over here, remember, I'm going to skip 0. That's the origin. Over here, I have -2, -3, -4. So I'm only labeling every other line, -6. Over here, I have up 2, up 4, up 6, down -2, -4, -6. Now, the first thing we want to be able to do is plot those points. I mean, if you're just using the formula, you don't have to plot the points. This is just to help you understand where the formula for the slope comes from. So if I plot the points, when I plot the points, I'm going to go -3, -2. How do I get there? Well, I start at the origin. I'm going over to -3, down to -2. So is that point right here? -3, -2. Do we all agree on that? And then if I want to plot the other point, that's 1, 6. I'm going to go over to 1, up to 6. Here's this point, 1, 6. And I just plotted and labeled those points. So now I can connect the points, and we can see that this is going to be the line. But we want to actually find the equation of the line. To find the equation of the line, I need to know y equals mx plus b. I need to know the slope. And does anybody remember what b is? What do we call b? The y-intercept. Y-intercept. Y-intercept, because when x equals 0, y will equal b. So it will be the only number left. And that's going to be where we cross the y-axis. It looks like to me it's crossing the y-axis because I graphed it. It's looking like it's crossing at 0, 4. I mean, my graph, it looks kind of accurate, so it might be. I don't know because I wasn't given that information, so I'm going to put a question mark next to it. It might be the y-intercept if I graphed everything correctly and accurately. Okay, so if I want to find the slope of the line, I want to know how much from this point where I started, which I'm calling the first point, x1, y1, just because it's the first point. I want to know from there, how much did I go up? That's called my rise. And then how much did I go over to get to my second point, which is my x2, y2. We just call it x1, y1, x2, y2 because it's all about the first point versus the second point. So how can you figure out how much did you rise? And by the way, this one, sorry, is going to be our run. So I could count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like my rise is 8. And then what's my run? 1, 2. You see, I'm just starting here. I go 1, 2, 3. Looks like 4, right? The run would be 4. So if my slope m is rise over run, then that's going to be 8 over 4. And that's okay. That's a fraction. Could we reduce the fraction? How many times does 4 go into 8? Yeah. Close, but the bigger number is on the top. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So my slope is 2. That means every time you rise 2, what's the denominator on 2? You run 1. Rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. And it's like stair steps, or you could take one big step, right? 8 steps up, 4 steps over. That's like, you know, when you see people jumping up the stairs, like they skip all the steps, you know, in between. Or you could rise 2, run 1, rise 2, run 1. Now, how would I use the formula for this? Let's say you're just on your test and you just are given these 2 points and you don't want to get out your graph paper. You don't have a ruler. You don't want to draw it all out. You can just skip all of that and go to the formula. So that's why we have our y2 minus our y1. That tells us how much I rise. Our x2 minus our x1 is going to, if I subtract those x coordinates, then it's going to tell me how much I run. So let's try it. We're going to go m equals, okay, here's my points here that I'm using. Here's my formula. Plugging in for y2, 6. From the formula, minus. What's y1? -2. Over x2. So x2 from my formula is here. Here's x2. That's why I always put the x1, y1, x2, y2 over the top or underneath so that I don't have to worry about which point I'm grabbing. Here's x2. That's 1. From the formula, there's a minus. And then what am I plugging in for x1? Isn't that -3? Now, if I do that math, you see how I have 6 minus -2. What do we do when we have minus and negative? Isn't that the same thing? It's plus 6 plus 2 over 1 minus -3. 1 minus -3 is going to be, yeah, 1 plus 3. Sorry, 1 plus 3. And that is giving you the 4. So here you have 8 over 4. Same thing we got when we counted the rise and the run, right? 8 over 4 is 2. So that right there is our slope, friends. The slope is 2. Okay, so if I have my formula, y equals mx plus b, I know that m equals 2, so I can replace that. Y equals 2x plus b. Now it said it wants the formula. I only have, it wants the equation for this line. I only have the slope. I don't actually know the y-intercept unless I graph it. If I look at the 2 points that I used to find the slope, how do I know that -3, -2, and 1, 6 are not the y-intercept? Like, how do I know that these 2 points, neither one of them is an intercept? Why? How do I know that? Exactly. The y-intercept only happens when x equals 0. So neither of these points intercept because x does not equal 0 in either of those points, okay? But lucky us, we actually spent quite a bit of time learning how to solve an equation for one variable. So if I have an x and a y value, and I plug those x and y values in, I will only have one variable left, which is b. So if I plug in 6 for y, 2 is the slope, 1 is the x, and by the way, I could have also used -3 and -2. I could have used this point. Now I only have one variable to solve for, and I can solve for b. How would I solve for b, that linear equation? Well, I have 6 equals, what's 2 times 1? 2 plus b. Can you see what number b would have to be in order for this to be true? Or what would you need to do to solve for b to get b by itself? Subtract the 2 from both sides. 2 minus 2 is 0, so all you have left there is b. 6 minus 2 is 4, and so b, the y-intercept, is 4. So what's the equation that passes through these 2 points? Y equals 2x plus 4. This is the equation. There's a lot of steps involved. So we're going to focus on, in just a moment, I'm going to give you a set of ordered pairs, and we're going to focus on having you practice finding the slope. And if you want to find the y-intercept as well, you can. Okay. Any questions?